Beloved, let me speak to you with gentleness, but absolute clarity about something that has already taken place. Heaven did not merely observe you endure the storm from a distant vantage point. It did not passively witness your suffering while remaining uninvolved. Heaven responded, and in that response, something shifted in the unseen realm. Something profound, something consequential, something that has quietly but definitively elevated your position in ways you're only beginning to perceive. This was not a passing thought. This was not wishful thinking or spiritual optimism. A decision was made about you, firmly, intentionally, with full knowledge of your history and your potential, in the courts of heaven, and you can already feel its echo reverberating through your daily life. Even if you haven't yet possessed a language to describe what's changing, mornings no longer arrive with that familiar sense of dread, that immediate heaviness, that feeling of bracing yourself just to face another day of survival. There is something different now, a calm readiness, a centered steadiness that wasn't there before. It's as if something deep within your spirit, something core and foundational, has finally settled into truth, has found solid ground after years of feeling unstable and uncertain. For a long time, longer than you probably realize, heaven has been paying meticulous attention to your life, not with judgment, not waiting with grim anticipation for you to fail or fall, but with care, with the kind of focused attention a master craftsman gives to a piece being carefully shaped, a trainer gives to an athlete being prepared for competition, a parent gives to a child being developed for greater responsibility. Every sacrifice you made that no one witnessed mattered deeply. Every quiet choice you made when there was no audience to applaud counted significantly. The moments you dismissed as ordinary, the decisions you thought were inconsequential, the days you assumed nobody noticed. None of it was overlooked. None of it was wasted. All of it was being recorded, measured, weighed in balances you couldn't see. The time you chose silence instead of revenge, when you had every right to speak and every weapon to use. The day you showed up bruised and exhausted, barely holding yourself together, and still chose integrity when compromise would have been easier and more immediately rewarding. The night you forgave someone who never asked for forgiveness and may never acknowledge they needed it. The morning you got up and chose discipline when your emotions were screaming for you to give up. These were not small moments, even though they felt unremarkable at the time. They were sacred tests of character. The psalmist understood this when he wrote, "For you, God, tested us. You refined us like silver," Psalm 66, verse 10. And now, after seasons of refining that felt endless and purposeless, the process is bearing fruit. The fire did its work. The impurities were removed. And what remains has been found valuable. If your life were a song, and in many ways it is, most people only ever heard the polished refrain. The parts that sounded strong, confident, hopeful, and easy to recognize. The verses you performed publicly. The choruses you sang when others were listening. But heaven listened with different ears. It leaned in closer. It paid attention to the verses you almost whispered, afraid to give them full voice. The pauses where your breath shook with emotion you were trying to control. The lines that remained unfinished and unresolved because you didn't yet have the strength or clarity to complete them. That is where your true music was formed. Not in the parts you performed for an audience, but in the parts you could barely articulate even to yourself. In the raw places, in the broken places, in the places where you had no energy left for pretense or performance. What drew heaven's attention was never a role you performed with precision, or an image you maintained with discipline. It wasn't your theological knowledge or your religious activity or your ability to say the right words in the right settings. What captured divine attention was something far more rare and valuable. The way suffering softened you instead of closing you off. Pain did not turn you cruel, though it easily could have. Betrayal did not make you bitter and cynical, though you had every justification. When you learned to experience how sharp truth could be, how words could wound and honesty could cut, you refused to use that knowledge as a weapon. You chose gentleness alongside strength. You chose to remain accessible even after being hurt. You chose vulnerability even after being betrayed. That choice, that deliberate, costly decision to remain soft-hearted in a world that reward hardness, carried enormous weight in the unseen realm. This is why your position shifted. This is why a promotion was granted that had nothing to do with public visibility or human recognition. Spiritual authority, you see, is not handed to the loudest voice in the room. It is not distributed based on charisma or confidence or the ability to command attention. It is entrusted to those who remain sincere when pretending would have been easier, to those who choose character development over reputation management, to those who build integrity in private long before they're given influence in public. Promotion in the spirit is not a prize to be displayed on a shelf or a credential to be showcased on a resume. It is a recognition of endurance. It is heaven looking at your life, really looking, seeing everything, missing nothing, and saying with conviction, they can carry more without losing who they are. They can handle greater weight without being corrupted by it. They can be trusted with influence because they already demonstrated faithfulness in obscurity. You thought you were barely holding on, just surviving day by day, maintaining the minimum required to not completely fall apart. Heaven saw maturity forming like muscle tissue after resistance training, leadership taking shape in the crucible of difficulty, depth being built slowly, layer by layer, in places where applause could not reach and recognition would never come. Look back with me at the season you just walked through. Really look at it, not with shame or regret, but with honest assessment. You prayed through confusion, not clarity. You practiced discipline when emotion failed you completely. You released forgiveness that was never requested and may never be acknowledged. You rebuilt your peace slowly, painstakingly, one quiet morning at a time, one small choice after another, with no guarantee that the investment would ever pay dividends. These were not acts of weakness, as you may have interpreted them. They were not evidence of passivity or failure to stand up for yourself. They were signs of authority, the kind of authority that governs the self before it ever governs circumstances. They prove that your spirit learned how to govern what once governed you. And heaven never overlooks that kind of evidence. The Apostle James wrote with hard-won wisdom, "Blessed is the one who perseveres under trial, because having stood the test, that person will receive the crown of life." James 1 verse 12. Perseverance was not just shaping your future in some abstract, distant way. It was actively qualifying you for trust in the present moment. Every time you chose to stay when leaving would have been easier, every time you chose truth when lies would have been more comfortable, every time you chose growth when stagnation would have been more familiar, you were demonstrating to heaven that you could be trusted with more. There comes a moment in every military structure when a soldier is called into a quiet room, no audience present, no celebration planned, no public ceremony, just a higher authority placing new insignia on the table and and saying with gravity, from this moment forward, your responsibility changes. Your clearance level increases. Your authority expands. And with it, your accountability deepens. That is precisely what just took place in the spirit realm concerning you. You were summoned forward. Angels who have been assigned to your protection stepped back to witness. Your entire history stood behind you like evidence in a courtroom, as God reviewed every unseen detail with perfect knowledge. The tears you hid from public view, the restraint you practiced when retaliation would have felt justified, the honesty you protected even when deception would have been more convenient, the character you built when no one was watching and no one would know the difference. And heaven, having reviewed the complete record, declared, now they are ready. Now they have been sufficiently tested. Now they can be trusted with more. This was not symbolic language or metaphorical imagery. Something real was placed on your life, an actual weight, an actual authority, an actual responsibility that exists in the spiritual dimension and manifests in the natural one. And since that moment occurred, you have felt it even if you could not name it. Even if you lacked the vocabulary to explain what was different, you knew something had shifted. Situations that once drained you emotionally, that once sent you into spirals of anxiety or triggered deep insecurities, no longer reach as deeply. They still occur. The circumstances haven't necessarily changed, but your internal response has fundamentally shifted. Conversations that used to stir anxiety, that used to keep you awake at night, replaying and analyzing, now meet a calmer response from you. You notice yourself thinking more clearly, responding with more measured wisdom, less reactive and more reflective. You notice something else as well. When tension enters a room, conflict between people, unspoken hostility, heavy atmosphere, peace often returns when you speak. Not because you're louder or more forceful, not because you dominate the space with your personality, but because something you carry disperses the heaviness. Your presence itself has become medicinal. This is not pride speaking. This is not ego inflation or self-aggrandizement. This is elevation. This is what spiritual promotion feels like before it ever looks like anything impressive from the outside. It manifests first as internal shifts, not external accolades. It is the freedom to move more slowly when everyone else is rushing. The complete lack of interest in gossip or drama that once seemed entertaining. The release from that compulsive need to explain yourself, defend yourself, make sure everyone understands your perspective and validates your experience. It is finding genuine rest in places where you once stayed perpetually guarded, always on alert, never fully relaxed. Your presence now carries a steadiness that cannot be rehearsed or performed. It's not a mask you put on or a persona you project. It's who you have genuinely become through the refining process. You have become the safe place you once desperately searched for in others. That is why heaven raised your rank. That is why the promotion was granted, while others chase visibility, measuring their worth by metrics and following counts. You built character in obscurity, while others collected approval like currency, needing constant validation from audiences to feel valuable. You gathered wisdom through experience, while others performed faith for observers, crafting carefully curated images of spiritual maturity. You lived it quietly, fully seen by heaven and fully recorded in books that matter eternally. The book of Proverbs captures this progression perfectly. The path of the righteous is like the morning sun, shining ever brighter to the full light of day. Proverbs 4 verse 18. If you notice life beginning to align with who you truly are at your core, if your external circumstances are finally starting to match your internal reality, you are not imagining. This is not wishful thinking or confirmation bias. If your decisions feel clearer now, if you find yourself knowing what to do with less deliberation and second guessing, if your voice sounds calmer to your own ears, you are not becoming distant or detached or cold as some might suggest. You are becoming established. You are becoming rooted. This is what it means to stand in the natural realm, where heaven has already seated you in the spiritual realm. Even now, in dimensions you cannot perceive with physical senses, your name has been moved on a registry you cannot see. Assignments that were not previously available have been unlocked. Doors that were previously sealed have been marked for opening. And in the stillness that precedes these manifestations, heaven pauses just before your new name is spoken aloud in circumstances that will recognize what has already been decided. When God calls you by a new name, when your identity shifts at a fundamental level, it rarely arrives as an audible sound or a mystical vision. More often, much more commonly, it arrives as a shift in how life responds to you. You begin to notice that situations meet you differently. Opportunities present themselves. Conversations take unexpected turns. Doors open with surprising ease. Obstacles that seem insurmountable suddenly resolve. Some of these changes feel gentle, even beautiful. Relationships deepen. Clarity increases. Peace settles. Others feel weighty and demanding. Expectations rise. Responsibility increases. The margin for error seems to narrow. Both categories, the gentle and demanding, are signs that something has fundamentally changed in the unseen realm, and that change is now manifesting in your visible reality. When heaven entrusts you with more, it does not only release comfort and blessing, it simultaneously releases responsibility and accountability. Favor always travels with assignment. They are twin realities, inseparable, two sides of the same promotion. You cannot have one without the other. This is wisdom that many people miss, which is why they pray desperately for promotion, but are not prepared for what actually comes with it. You may first notice this change in your interactions with people. Subtle shifts that reveal something in the spiritual atmosphere has changed. Someone who once dismissed your words with barely concealed contempt suddenly pauses to listen with genuine attention. Someone who used to make you the easy target of jokes, who regularly diminished you or spoke down to you, no longer finds the opening. The dynamic has shifted, not because you became intimidating or aggressive, not because you finally learned to clap back or defend yourself with cutting words, but because something within you, something core and foundational, no longer agrees to being diminished. Your spirit no longer participates in dynamics where you're positioned as lesser than. This happens almost automatically, without conscious effort, because the internal agreement that once made those dynamics possible has been withdrawn. This shift alone will create distance with certain people, especially those who relied on your uncertainty and insecurity to control the tone of the room, to maintain their position, to feel better about themselves. When you stop playing a role they assigned you, when you stop being predictably unsure, apologetic, always explaining and defending yourself, they experience discomfort they don't know how to process. That is what spiritual authority looks like in real life. Not spectacle, not drama, not aggressive boundary enforcement, or loud declarations of your worth. Just boundaries that remain steady even when pressed. Limits that hold firm even when tested. a sense of self that no longer bends to accommodate everyone else's need for you to be smaller. This new rank, this elevation in the spirit, will reveal itself in 3 distinct and undeniable ways. Pay attention to these signs, because they confirm what has already taken place. First, in what you allow, you'll feel a quiet but firm resistance rise up within you when something no longer belongs in your life. Old habits that once felt normal now feel foreign. Old dynamics that you once tolerated now feel intolerable. Old roles you once played, the mediator, the people pleaser, the one who absorbed everyone's dysfunction, they will feel like ill-fitting clothes you've finally outgrown. The interesting thing is this resistance won't feel like temptation you're struggling to resist. It won't be dramatic or difficult. These things simply won't tempt you anymore. They'll feel wrong at a fundamental level, misaligned with who you've become. You won't need lengthy explanations for why you're stepping away. You won't need to justify your boundaries to people who are determined to misunderstand them. Your spirit already knows, and that knowing is sufficient. Second, in who comes to you. Complete strangers may open up to you with surprising honesty, sharing things they rarely tell anyone. Family members may bring you their real concerns instead of edited, sanitized versions. Co-workers may seek your counsel. Friends may confide their struggles. And people will tell you, sometimes without even understanding why they're saying it, I feel safe talking to you. I don't know why, but I trust you. This safety you provide is not something you learn from a training manual or develop through conscious technique. This is not a skill you can add to your resume. It is something you carry because of what you've been through and how you've been changed by it. The Apostle James described his quality. The wisdom from above is first pure, then peace-loving, considerate, submissive, full of mercy and good fruit, impartial and sincere. James 3, verse 17. That wisdom is beginning to mark your presence in ways you cannot fake or manufacture. Third, in how you hear God. Not necessarily louder voices or constant miraculous interventions or daily supernatural encounters, but clearer direction, more precise guidance, a steady inner knowing that wasn't there before. This way, not that way. Stay here. Let that go. Speak now. Wait longer. It won't feel chaotic or confusing. It will feel grounded, settled. Certain even when you can't explain to others how you know what you know. This is not confusion masquerading as guidance. This is actual divine direction, the kind that comes from sustained intimacy with God, from years of learning to recognize His voice, from faithfulness in seasons when you heard nothing and trusted anyway. Now let me be clear about something crucial. Promotion in the Spirit does not mean life becomes easier overnight. It does not mean all your problems vanish or all your struggles cease. Sometimes it means the conversations you're having become more serious, more consequential. The decisions you're making carry more weight, affect more people, have longer lasting implications. Your words reach deeper into people's lives, for good or for harm, which means you must stew with them with greater care. That is why heaven waited to promote you. God observed how you handled pain when no one applauded, when there was no recognition, when you received no credit for your endurance. Now He is watching how you handle influence, how you steward authority, how you manage responsibility when people are paying attention. And hear this with absolute clarity. You are not permitted to use your story to shame others. You are not permitted to use your hard-won confidence to diminish anyone else. You are not permitted to wield your spiritual authority like a weapon to control or manipulate or elevate yourself at someone else's expense. This is the weight of your new rank. You carry more. Therefore, what you do with it matters infinitely more. You will also notice a significant change in your inner dialogue. There was a time, perhaps not that long ago, when you replayed conversations endlessly in your mind, torturing yourself with analysis, when you questioned every decision, second-guessed every word, tried desperately to fix people's opinions of you in your head, since you couldn't control them in reality, when you lay awake at night rehearsing what you should have said, how you should have responded, why they probably think you're foolish or inadequate. Now you may catch yourself thinking something radically different. I know who I am. God knows who I am. That is enough. And then, this is the crucial part, you actually move forward. You don't stay stuck in the cycle. You don't keep trying to manage everyone's perception. You rest in the truth and get on with your life. This is not arrogance. This is not pride that precedes a fall. This is identity finally settling into place, becoming rooted in something that cannot be shaken by human opinion or circumstantial evidence. There may be moments when you pause and wonder why everything suddenly feels so serious, why the conversations feel heavier, why you seem to be the one who notices dynamics that everyone else ignores or avoids, why you can't pretend anymore, can't play along with surface level interaction, can't participate in environments that once felt normal but now feel suffocating, why you feel like the anchor in certain rooms, the one holding things steady, maintaining stability, providing weight so that lighter, less grounded people don't just blow away with whatever wind happens to be strongest at the moment. This is not coincidence. This is not your personality randomly changing or you becoming overly serious or losing your sense of fun. You were trained for this role quietly behind the scenes when you didn't even know you were in training. Every time you chose truth over image, every time you sat with discomfort instead of escaping it through distraction or addiction, every time you walked away from drama instead of feeding it and watching it grow, you were being prepared for exactly this. You may notice something else as well. Noise impresses you less than it used to. Loud confidence no longer convinces you automatically. You've learned to distinguish between volume and substance, between performance and authenticity, between image management and actual character. You listen for consistency now. You observe how people treat others when there is nothing to gain from the interaction. You notice whether someone's private character matches their public presentation. This is how God sees. God looks at the heart, not the external appearance, not the resume, not the reputation. And the more your perspective aligns with his, the more spiritual authority you carry without conscious effort. You begin to see what he sees, value what he values, prioritize what he prioritizes. The Gospel of Luke records words spoken by Jesus that apply directly to this season of your life. From everyone who has been given much, much will be demanded, and from the one who has been entrusted with much, much more will be asked. Luke 12, verse 48. These moments you're stepping into, these opportunities that are beginning to present themselves, these doors that are starting to open, they are not random coincidences. They are not lucky breaks or fortunate timing. They are assignments that finally match who you have become. They are responsibilities that align with the character you've developed. They are opportunities that fit the person you are now, not the person you were 5 years ago or even 5 months ago. Do not talk yourself out of them. Do not shrink back into false humility because an older version of you feels unqualified. That version was not invited to this table. This version was. The you who has been refined and tested and proven faithful. That is who received the invitation. Now you must practice something that may feel uncomfortable at first, walking as someone who has already been chosen, rather than someone hoping to be selected. This represents a fundamental identity shift. It changes everything about how you move through the world. This means you stop chasing rooms that do not honor you, begging for entrance to spaces where your presence is tolerated but not celebrated. You stop explaining basic respect to people who are committed to misunderstanding you, who have already decided what they think regardless of what you say. You stop spending precious energy trying to prove your growth to people who are emotionally invested in keeping you locked in your past, who need you to remain the person you were, so they can maintain their narrative about you. Dear chosen one, you do not need to perform your new rank. You do not need to announce it, advertise it, or make sure everyone recognizes it. You only need to live as someone God trusts. You only need to be faithful with what has been entrusted to you. That is the heart of this entire shift. Trust. God trusted you with pain, with disappointment, with betrayal, with loss, and you did not waste it. You didn't let it make you cruel or bitter. You didn't use it as an excuse to harm others or justify compromising your character. You let it refine you instead of define you. Now he is trusting you with honor, with influence, with authority, with increased responsibility. And he expects the same faithfulness you demonstrated in obscurity. So when you feel the weight of this change, the responsibility settling on your shoulders, the clarity becoming almost uncomfortable in its precision, the attention you're receiving from people who never noticed you before, remember this foundational truth. You are not here by accident. You were observed with careful attention. You were measured against standards you couldn't see. You were found faithful in areas you didn't know were being evaluated. Heaven's decision has already been made. Your rank has officially changed in the courts of heaven, and your life in the natural realm is beginning to follow, beginning to align with what has already been established in the spiritual realm. The transition will not always be smooth. There will be moments when you feel the full weight of what you carry and wonder if you're truly ready. There will be situations where you question whether you heard correctly, whether you truly are qualified, whether you're making the right decisions with this new level of responsibility. In those moments, return what you know. God does not promote prematurely. He does not entrust authority to those who cannot handle it. If he placed something on your life, it is because you've already demonstrated the character necessary to steward it well. Your history is not a liability. It is your qualification. The pain you endured taught you compassion. The betrayal you survived taught you discernment. The loneliness you walked through taught you dependence on God rather than human approval. The seasons of hiddenness taught you that your worth is not determined by who sees you or celebrates you. All of it, every single piece of your story that you once wished you could erase, was necessary preparation for what you're stepping into now. Nothing was wasted. Nothing was random. It was all precisely calibrated to shape you into someone who could be trusted with more. So stop apologizing for taking up space. Stop diminishing your gifts to make others comfortable. Stop playing small, because that's what people are used to. You've been promoted. Heaven made a decision about you. Your responsibility is not to convince everyone else that the decision was correct. Your responsibility is to be faithful with what has been entrusted to you. Walk with the quiet confidence of someone who knows they have been chosen, tested, and found faithful. Not arrogant, not loud, not constantly reminding everyone of your authority. Just settled, grounded, clear about who you are and whose you are. The world needs what you carry now, not a performance of authority, but the genuine article, not someone pretending to have it all together, but someone who's been genuinely transformed through fire and emerged refined. Not someone claiming to speak for God without the character to back it up, but someone whose life validates their words. This is your moment. This is your season. Heaven has already spoken. Your rank has changed. Now live accordingly, with humility, with wisdom, with the sober understanding that authority is not a prize to display, but a stewardship to honor. You are no longer searching for direction, hoping someone will notice you, wondering if you'll ever be qualified. You are learning to stand confidently where God has already placed you, to occupy the position that has already been granted, to steward the authority that has already been entrusted. The decision has been made. Now walk in it, not perfectly, no one does, but faithfully, and that will be more than enough.